Welcome back. Welcome back. And now a real treat. After 10 years and 14 Grammy Awards, singer and composer Alicia Keys is re-releasing her debut album, Songs in A Minor. In fact, 10 years ago this week, her first album was released. Here's a clip from the song which made the world fall in love with her.
I keep on falling in. You make me blue. Sometimes I feel good. At times I feel used.
Alicia there, in great form, Fallen, and the world started falling in love with her. Alicia was in London this week to host her annual benefit for the Keep a Child Alive Foundation, a foundation which pushes for universal AIDS treatment on the spot and supports programs across Africa and India. I joined Alicia backstage at the end of the event where she'd just performed with a variety of artists and raised hundreds of thousands of pounds on the spot for the foundation. Alicia, that was a great show.
Thank you.
And a great night for your cause. People were passionate and so on.
Thank you.
How did you pick on AIDS as being the centre of the foundation?
Well,
because there are a lot of illnesses, there's a lot of tragedies in the world, but you went straight for AIDS, didn't you?
yes. Well, my organization is called Keep a Child Alive, and to me, AIDS is the biggest tragedy, and it's been happening for now 30 years, and it's, there's so much that has to happen to really pay attention to it and to eliminate it. I think that there's not enough attention given to the AIDS pandemic, and it's such an important situation that's wiping out generations after generations. Especially our focus is in Africa and India, and generations are just being wiped out. I became a part of it because I actually, it was kind of very by chance. And I met this wonderful woman named Lee Blake, who is the co-founder of Keep a Child Alive. And she started to tell me about the pandemic in Africa, and I was only 18 years old, and I had just started kind of getting ready to put out my first record, and I really hadn't traveled to that extent, and it was all very new to me, and I couldn't believe that so many people were dying and so many people didn't have access to a treatment that existed in the West, and it just didn't make sense to me. So as I went on tour and time passed, I was asked to go to Africa and to perform. And so I was very excited because I felt honored that people knew me all the way over there.
Yeah.
And when I went there, it was for a particular thing that centered around AIDS. And I started to meet people. And I started to meet these young people that had lost their parents and were becoming heads of their own household. So maybe they were 15 years old and they were the part of child-headed households where they took care of their younger brothers and their younger sisters. And I was so close to their age, I felt instant hit. Because I said, wow, what if I was only 14 or 13 and lost my parents, had no one there to guide me, had to take care of my younger brothers and sisters? Would anybody care? Would anybody listen? And it really motivated me to want to be a part of helping to get access.
Yes, that's fascinating, because there's a new situation now, isn't there, in a sense that people sense in articles in London and New York and wherever else, sense that we're on the verge of a scientific breakthrough.
Yes.
That we already have a great improvement, obviously, in people living with HIV for 32 years and things like that. But we're on the verge of a breakthrough. Or people, this is more selfish, feel that, okay, Africa has it, but we don't have to worry about it here, wherever, Sweden, wherever. For those two reasons, it's going to get more and more difficult to keep people energized about the problem, because it seems as though it's got a lot better than it was.
Well, I mean, I think you have some really strong points there. And yes, there has been the discovery that when one is on ARVs, which is the medicine that treats it, that the percentage of spreading it, you have a 96% chance of not spreading the disease to an uninfected person, which is amazing. That's incredible, but it should just push people to know how important treatment is. So I think instead of it becoming a more passive attitude, like, oh, well, we've made such strides, instead we have to focus on how important treatment is. And I think that's part of what I want to do, is I want to help keep the eye on it.
And you've seen the situation in action, haven't you?
Yes.
I mean, you've been to countries in Africa and so on where the drugs that your cause, your foundation made possible are actually at work. You've seen it in action.
Absolutely. I mean, I have seen children who, when they have access to the medicine early enough, they can absolutely function, and more than function, they can flourish. I've seen children who were, when I went there, maybe 4 years old and just a baby, and she was HIV positive. She got access to the medicine, and now she's 8, 9, and she's incredible. She's able to do everything that anyone's able to do. So I've seen absolutely it works. It's incredible. It keeps you alive.
Yeah, and that you've seen in action.
Absolutely.
That
with
must
my
have been
own
exciting
2 eyes.
in the sense of, after you've been working away for this in America and around the world, to actually see it in action.
Especially because when we first started, there really wasn't the access to medicines because there weren't generics. And so now, because of the work we've done, and a lot of the Clinton initiative has also done as well, has really allowed there to be the generics accessible, so they're much cheaper. So now since we provide that medicine, we see a lot more people able to be treated, which is the point, and brings us back to that original point of how important treatment is.
And what about stigma, which at the very beginning, I mean, right back at the beginning when Princess Diana kissed an AIDS victim or whatever.
Wow.
That was a stigma even for her, and it was a stigma all over the world. Would you catch it? Would you?
Yeah.
Is that a bit better now? Is there less stigma, or still a great deal?
I think there's still a great deal of stigma, and I think that a lot of people, you'll see the people that we speak to, and that they are very afraid to disclose. And oftentimes they will say even their parents passed away from TB or malaria or something different than AIDS, because they're very afraid that stigma will cause them not to be not accepted in their communities. I think that stigma comes from ignorance, and it's just, the fact is that you don't get AIDS is not airborne. You don't get it from hugging someone. You don't get it from kissing someone. You don't get it from touching their hand. And I think people just need to know that, because how are you supposed to know if you weren't told that? So you don't get it, it's not airborne. So it's just an ignorance that I hope to be erased.
Absolutely. And has this crusade and so on been, you've said some very interesting things about the place of God in your life and so on. There was that great quote which I've got here, which says, "I think God had a very clear plan for me when I was raised by my mother. He knew," that's God, "he knew that would give me a certain strength and backbone that I might not otherwise have had." Has God been a force in your life?
Yes, a very big force. I'm a very spiritual person, and I do believe in a higher power, and I feel like it's important to believe in something greater than just what's here, And so, yes, I do believe that that has been a big force in my life. It's kept me grounded. It gives me something to believe in, to have faith in. And those are two of, I think, the most important things you can have.
Yeah, and of course, show business, late night or whenever, it's full of temptation. So that's a good force to have working on the good side.
Yeah, it is. It's. I was talking about this today, actually. Just the amount of access that there is to basically anything at all times, and from even a very young age, there's kind of no censoring about it in this industry. And so I think that's why a lot of people, it's very difficult to know what to do or how to, just keep on your path. So yes, having something to believe in does help me to know where I'm going.
And what about your regular acts of creation and so on? Is almost everything you write written at the piano, or is it occasionally not?
No, it's written in so many ways. A lot of them are definitely written at the piano because that's kind of my foundation, and that's where I'll start, or that's where I'll be. But sometimes, I'll just have a piece of paper and I'll write a poem that eventually becomes a song, or sometimes I'll actually be on my pager,
yeah.
and I'll be, I'll see a sign, or I'll hear a conversation, and that conversation will become a title, and that title will then become a song eventually. So.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yes, because I remember Paul McCartney saying to me not long ago, was saying about with Yesterday, I mean the most prolific song and whatever, and that he woke up in the morning with Yesterday in his head. Wow. I mean, almost the whole tune playing.
Wow.
That he never sat down to write it.
Wow, it wrote itself.
It came, and when he woke up in the morning, he got it. Wow. But the problem was he thought it couldn't possibly be his to get it so easily like that. But of course he checked every source in the world, and it was his.
Wow.
But that was an extraordinary way to.
Yeah, that's incredible.
That's a dream come true.
That's I feel, to me, the music in its purest form is absolutely a conduit from a higher place, and we are a vessel, that it comes through. Yes. And so that's why I'm never kind of cocky about the music that comes, because it's such it's a magic. And so in his case, I'm sure he's in awe of that song to this day, because it's magic.
He said he was terrified. He was about to discover that it had been written by
right.
whoever he was joking about at the time. Yeah.
It's not going to be mine.
Just astonishing. But it does have the power to inspire, doesn't it,
yes.
music, a lot. And
yes.
when you sing, as you did tonight, about freedom and so on, I mean, that is really powerful stuff, isn't it?
I agree, and I think that music is the one thing that just pulls down all barriers. It's the thing that I think I've discovered the most in my travels. If I'm in China, or if I'm in Germany, or if I'm in wherever, we don't speak the same language, and maybe some people speak English and some people don't, but music, we all speak, and that possibility of just knowing what that feels like, that's all you need to know, is what it feels like.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what are your ambitions now? Maybe more children as well, but I mean that's not strictly a career problem. That's something quite different, or a career joy. But I mean, what are there? I mean, music is your first and second love, and your third love, isn't it? I mean, although you could have an acting career or other things. I mean, music film career too, of course. But actually, music will always come first, won't it?
I feel yes. I mean, music is absolutely my first passion, and it's what I understand, and it's the way that I express myself, and it has been since I was young. I definitely have a lot of other aspirations as well that are creative ones, and I just realized that I want to reach people. That's what I want to do. I think that's my life's mission, is I want to reach people. I want to be a person that they can believe in. I want to be somebody that they know that whatever I'm telling them, it's the truth. It is something that, they can also be a part of. I would love to move into producing. I want to produce Broadway. I want to produce film and television. I also want to direct. I think there's so many stories that need to be told. I want to do many things to continue to just push and grow and try.
Terrific, yes. And you called your 8-month-old son Egypt, which is a very memorable name.
Yes.
I'm sure the people of Egypt were very, very grateful about this additional publicity, and rather positive publicity, and so on and so forth. But in fact, it goes back to a time in 2006 when you had a bit of a crisis, and 3 weeks in Egypt changed the situation.
Yeah, it did, exactly. I was just reaching a place where it was time for me to let go of a lot of things, and I had a lot of people in my life professionally that were just not quite doing the best by me, and it was time for me to really step into a more of a womanly role, and I needed to make choices and make decisions, and before that happened, I became very down. I became very depressed about I was tired. I was doing a lot of things, so it just kind of wore on me. It was my first vacation that I took, rather a trip that I took by myself, and it was very enlightening for me. So all that I saw and all that I learned was that we as human beings can really be timeless, and we can create things that are endless. I mean, seeing the pyramids and the temples is a very spiritual experience, and so I saw this power that we have in us to build and create, and it reinvigorated me to want to build and create timeless things.
So it restored you, really, and it reinvigorated you. And
it did.
And it's commemorated in Egypt.
My son, yes. Exactly.
Which country are you going to name your next child after? We'll see.
We've talked about India, but who knows?
Oh, well, we'll see. We'll watch carefully. Hey, this has been an absolute delight to talk.
Thank
It
you.
really has. And this evening was inspiring, so thanks for everything.
I'm so glad you could be here, and thank you for your time.
Delighted to be here.
Me too.
Delighted.
Thanks.
Alicia Keys. Just a few years ago, a clip was posted on YouTube, which has now become an internet sensation with over 50 million hits around the world. It's a quite bizarrely remarkable story. Back in London in the late 60s, two young men bought from Harrods, of all things, a pet lion cub. They kept him at their home until, not surprisingly, he got a bit too big. So then they shipped him off to Kenya to live in the wild. And a year later, the two men, John Rendall and Ace Berg, returned to Kenya, hoping to see their former pet. And here's the tense moment, the moment of possible reunion. Will he recognize us?
It's a pleasure to see that, David.
Well, it's a pleasure to watch it myself, not having been there at the time. But it must have been... How long were you waiting to see if Christian would turn up for a reunion, which obviously you couldn't have emailed him about?
That's certainly not. We'd written to George Adamson and said we'd like to come and see him. And he said, well, I can't predict if you will, because he wanders off for indeterminate periods. We said, doesn't matter, we want to come and see you. And so we arrived and flew up to Kora National Park, where this all takes place. And George said he arrived last night. And so he was outside the camp. And George has written about this many times, about this psychic connection between human beings and lions. And certainly he and his wife Joy had it with Elsa. Yeah. And Christian was there. So George went out to get him, took us, put us at the bottom of that hill, and brought Christian over the brow of the hill. Now, Christian knew something must have been unusual, because George never showed his lions off to people, because they're going wild. Yeah. So they're not on exhibit. So if you went to see George, you couldn't predict you would see the lions. So he kept them away from people. When Christian came over the brow of the hill and saw us, that was a change in the normal pattern of rehabilitation. So he knew something was happening. And so he comes down the hill, he's looking, you see that pace towards us. George said, call him. And that's when he takes off and starts accelerating.
Oh, the thrill that he did appear to remember you and so on must have been enormous.
They have fantastic memories. They know. Yeah. They remember.
Where did you meet him then? Where did you find him?
Well, Christian came from Harrods, just along the road here.
Really?
Second floor, as the zoo was then. And Ace and I purchased him there with the thought of finding somewhere. We've got to be able to do something better for this beautiful cub. Even though Harrods looked after him well, I'm not disputing that, but you're allowed to do it. That was legal then, back in the 60s. Yeah. It's illegal now after the Endangered Species Act of 73. So we bought him, and he moved into Sophisticat, a pine furniture shop in the King's Road, and we exercised him in the Moravian Close, just off the King's Road. So he had a wonderful life there.
Were people who suddenly ran into him while he was on one of his walks around there must have had quite a shock?
It was the 60s, David, so it was not people were a little less surprised they would be now.
Yeah.
But there was no safe and health team. No one came and said, look, what precautions have you made? But it took quite a lot of us to look after. It was Ace, myself, my girlfriend at the time, Jennifer Mary Taylor, who still owns Sophisticat, still exists, and two owners of the shop, a wonderful Irish daily, who he used to love, Kay. He used to chase her dusters and hoovers and things.
Well, I know prices have gone up over the years, but how much did you negotiate to pay for Christian at Harrods?
Well, unfortunately, there was no negotiation. It was 250 guineas, done, and which was a lot of money.
All or nothing.
All or nothing, and that's about £3,500 to £4,000 today, apparently. So he wasn't expensive, but he was a lion of quality. and everyone who met him fell in love with him. He entranced people. He loved children, which is not always a lion characteristic. And then one day, Bill Travers and Virginia McKenna, who'd starred in the film of Born Free, about George and Joy Adamson's life with Elsa, came into the shop to buy a desk. And we said, are you Bill Travers and Virginia McKenna? And yes, and they said, oh, we think we've got something downstairs that you might find a little more interesting than a pine desk. And, of course, you've seen how we looked. We had all the hair and all the bell-bottoms and everything. I'm sure you wore them, too, in the 60s.
Yeah.
And
not the bell-bottoms.
and he was looking at us very dubiously. He went down and saw Christian. And because they had made Born Free and worked with lions, they immediately recognised that this was a very special lion. And
well, let's take a look at it. There was a reunion, wasn't there? How long? A year after that first?
That's correct. Yes.
Reunion.
There were two filmings. This one was done by Bill Travers production company, and that's why we have that quality of film we saw. The second one was filmed by Tony Fitzjohn, who became George's assistant, and subsequently the field director of the George Adamson Trust. But Tony filmed this second sequence a year later, in 1972, which is the last time we saw Christian. And in this, he is a teenager. He's no longer that cub, and he's much more mature, and he's still affectionate, but it's much more, you know.
He's still recognised.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But it was slightly dicier how he would react.
It wasn't dicier. It was just a different relationship. And I'm sure, as you know, I've got boys, I know as you have, that they come to a stage where they say, oh, Dad, don't kiss me anymore, in front of the guys, that kind of thing. We're grown up now. Yeah. And
so Christian was growing up.
He was certainly growing up.
Now, did you ever see him again? No, you didn't.
I didn't. George and Tony Fitzjohn did for about another 9 months. And I think you've got a still there of him when you see him in his absolute prime. Yes. Yeah, absolute prime. Fantastic looking lion, probably 600 pounds. Yeah. Wonderful.
How long would he have lived for?
If he made
probably
7, 8 years, that's
all.
That's all. Because remember, every day or every few days they're hunting. That's always dangerous. If a buffalo throws them the wrong way, they can break a leg. That's a dead lion, in effect. And they fight for territory. And
you've also got the situation you were saying where there used to be 250,000 lions in the world and now there's 20,000.
That is a terrifying statistic, isn't it? Because when we took Christian out to George Adamson, Bill Travers had been negotiating with the wildlife department there, and they said, why do you want to bring another lion to Africa? We've got 250,000. Yeah. Now we're down to 20,000. It is an extraordinary drop.
Well, that's the story of natural life in many areas. Well, it's fascinating to hear about this. Did you ever have another pet in your life?
Nothing could replace it.
No, exactly. But anything was going to be an anticlimax, wasn't it?
But I'm still very much involved. I'm a trustee of the George Adamson Trust, and we now run Mkomazi Game Reserve in Tanzania, where Tony Fitzjohn is the field director, and we breed black rhinos there. And so I've got my little rhino here.
The first guest to have a black rhino. Well, good luck with all you're up to. It's great to have you with us.
Well, thank you. We've got an exhibition of Joy's paintings in Cheltenham for the Elsa Trust in October, so it all goes on.
The story goes on?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed, John. Well, that was a fascinating tale and an unusual life for a lion. My thanks to all of my guests, not actually including Christian, he's not here, but join me again in 7 days' time and see who's here then. Another Frost Over the World.